Let's dive into the expandable storage options of the Xbox Series X. And what's that thing at the end of the Xbox Series X? You're about to find out. What's up, everybody? Brad here, back again. And there's been a lot of craziness going on around the Xbox Series X, the Xbox universe, the Samsung universe, the storage universe. There's been a lot of crazy things coming out, and some of it I know explicitly is incorrect. And there's some other things that are just floating around that I think it's worth pointing out and talking about and trying to give you guys more context about what I know is accurate and other things that have been bubbling up, if you will. First off, earlier this month, Samsung held an event and they talked about their new phones, all that good stuff, but they also announced a new nebulous partnership with Xbox and Microsoft and all this stuff, and everybody sort of went crazy about what this actually meant. Does this mean the Xbox Series X is going to have 5G built in? Oh my God, that is like the craziest rumor that I've heard so far, but let's just talk about it because the two companies did announce a partnership, but what I really do think that this is more about is getting xCloud installed natively, or pre-installed, I should say, on Samsung's upcoming devices. That's going to be a big win for Microsoft. It's also going to help Samsung work on its xCloud services locally, right? Samsung is working pretty deeply on 5G technology. Microsoft wants to deliver xCloud over 5G. And in the Korean markets especially, there's a lot of partnerships that go on in this arena. I very much expect that Microsoft and Samsung's partnership is much more about delivering xCloud on Samsung style devices, more so than saying, hey, Samsung is going to put all their chips into the Xbox Series X, which has been some of the crazier speculation out there. Like people are talking about them putting their CPU. I don't think it's going to go that far. Microsoft hardware is already locked down. We already know that it's using AMD. It's using AMD for the graphics. I don't think they're going to, actually, I know they're not putting a 5G chip into the Xbox Series X. That is not happening. That is just not happening. And so just keep in mind that partnership is going to be more about the delivery, I believe, of xCloud. And there's some gaming things going on, but I think that is where the technical logistical partnership is actually taking place. So other things that are happening here. So I want to talk about the expandable storage for a minute here, because there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of details we don't know. And Microsoft officially hasn't even said, hey, this is actually happening. But with the Samsung partnership, a lot of people, and this one seems a lot more plausible, that Samsung must be working with Microsoft on that expandable storage. Samsung makes a ton of different storage. They make a ton of different M.2 drives and all that, and solid states and all that good stuff. Samsung is one of the world's largest creators of that stuff. And so it would make sense when Microsoft announced this partnership that that's what that was actually talking about. I'm not quite sure that's the case. One of the reasons why I bring that up, and there's a lot of tangible evidence to point this out, is that Microsoft has a very good working relationship, especially on the Xbox side, with Seagate, right? There are tons of Seagate drives out there that are Xbox branded, and that appears to be who Microsoft typically favors for at least the Xbox One expandable storage, where you just plug it in the USB. And Seagate, keep in mind, also makes drives as well. And so it would not surprise me to see that Seagate is going to be one of the preferred vendors, at least initially, for the expandable storage options that are coming to the Xbox Series X. So when people are looking for details and looking through the weeds, don't leave out Seagate. I would really think that they are going to be a primary vendor. So keep your eyes open for things like that. Also, another technology that is worth pointing out on the expandable storage side is look what Microsoft is doing with the Surface Pro X. See this little video here showing them how you can remove the hard drive? That module, which is, I believe, M.2 based, but the more so the point here is that module is about the size you would expect for expandable storage. We already know that it comes in multiple varieties. Microsoft is already familiar with the technology to do expandable and removable storage. Now, granted, it's a little bit more complex on the Surface Pro X, but you can imagine them taking that same technology that Microsoft has already worked on, and keep in mind that the people that work on hardware at Microsoft all talk and all hang out together, and Xbox and Surface aren't that far apart logistically anymore, could be the actual mechanism that is going to be providing the expandable storage. So keep that in mind as everyone keeps digging through the weeds and looking for a whole bunch of different little details across the internet. I love getting all the tips, guys. I really do, because it helps point me in directions. But there was some just Samsung stuff that just seemed crazy that I just wanted to address up front. Now, I think it was last week that I posted up people asking questions about the Series X, and I've tried to pull out some of the more ones that I can at least address. There's a ton of things saying, hey, what's the RAM clock speed? What's the cache size on the chip? I don't know everything. I'd love to tell you that I do, but there are some things that I definitely can't help with. One being that an eagle-eyed viewer pointed out, says, hey, what is this thing right here? It's on the edge. It's kind of, it looks like it's round. I can confirm that it is actually round, but I believe with a high degree of confidence that this is a rubber mount that is on the device so that you can stand it up and it keeps the vibrations of the device up off the ground. It also helps, I believe, optimize airflow just ever so slightly. So that is a rubber disc that goes on the bottom and is designed to be a stand for the Xbox Series X. One question that I'm digging into currently is Bluetooth. Right now, one of the frustrating things with the Xbox One is that if you have a Bluetooth enabled headset, you can't actually connect it to the Xbox. It doesn't work. One of the even more frustrating things is if you spend a whole bunch of money for Microsoft's fancy dancy Surface headphones, which are great headphones, and I would buy a pair, but they don't work with the Xbox Series X. The Xbox One X, they don't. They can't connect. It's really crazy that this stuff doesn't work. Now, the next question is what about with the next generation? Is this stuff going to work? Now, I got to qualify this that I'm not absolutely sure on the information I'm about to say. I'm trying to answer the question the best that I know. I don't think that the next generation actually supports Bluetooth in the hardware itself. What might be happening, though, is that we know that Microsoft makes controllers that have Bluetooth. It would not surprise me to see that Microsoft comes up with some sort of creative solution where the headset actually talks to the controller and then the controller talks to the console. That might be a possibility about how they're going to move forward with Bluetooth for the next generation. I don't know. I haven't heard explicitly that the next generation console has Bluetooth built in yet. I'm hoping that we hear something soon from Microsoft, because that is going to be I really hope, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't do this, but the reason why I think it might go through the controller is right now, that's actually how it works, right? There's headsets that plug into the controller, and that's just the way it functions. I could see Microsoft enabling Bluetooth between the controller and the headset, and then it gets blasted to the console that way. We know that technology exists. That's how it currently happens with the Xbox One. So I'm hoping that that is going to do it. Keep getting questions about Windows mode, and I'm assuming that Windows mode means, can you just boot this thing up like a PC? I don't think that is going to be happening. There's a lot of reasons why I don't think that would happening, but the biggest reason actually comes from our friends over in the PlayStation camp. Remember, PlayStation 3 had a version of Linux OS that ran, and all it did was gave attackers new vulnerabilities to open up the hardware and gain access to the underlying system. I don't think Microsoft is going to enable that functionality. Aside from the security aspect of it, there's also overhead that has to be introduced to be able to run Windows. You can't just put a Windows DVD in there, install drive or whatever, USB, plug it in, and then just boot Windows. You need a BIOS, you need, or UEFI, depending on, the underlying architecture of the firmware that is needed to load and boot and all that stuff. You can't just boot these things up. Even though they have PC components, they are missing certain aspects on a software side that would make them operate like a traditional Windows PC. And to make them operate like a traditional Windows PC means Microsoft has to introduce extra components, extra software, extra overhead when building it to make it all function like a traditional desktop. And to me, all that tells me is that's less time spent on optimizing for gaming and better gaming experiences, which Phil Spencer has said is the absolute highest priority. I'm not saying it won't ever come, but to me, the gut check says that doesn't really make sense, because then it is just truly a PC. And then why do we even need an Xbox One Series X at all? Why not just let that software run on any device, and then you can have an Xbox console anywhere? So keep that in mind for now. Now, any indication on more Xbox 360 backwards compatible titles? I believe Microsoft that has said that they have officially stopped adding more titles from Xbox 360. So I don't think that is going to be happening. Will they consider keeping HDMI in on the Series X and maybe drop it for Lockhart? Or am I just screwed because they feel it was pointless because so few used it? I hate to say that you're probably screwed, but it is completely my understanding right now that Microsoft is not going to return HDMI in. It's just not coming back. I have very strong reasoning to believe that is not happening. And so unfortunately you are screwed, and it is just it's not coming, I think, on any SKU at this time. It says, I want to know when I can pre-order the Xbox Series X. I would love to know as well. I would hedge that at E3 we will learn that date. Microsoft last time, I believe, opened up pre-orders late June, something like that, around for the Xbox One X. And so I would imagine that they're going to do the same thing. The interesting thing right now is that there's a lot of production issues in China because of the coronavirus that is going around. Microsoft is not yet, per my understanding, in full-scale production of the Series X. That has not taken place yet, but we're not far off. I would hedge that we are 30 to 60-ish days from Microsoft really cranking up those production lines and getting things ready for launch. Just because they crank up the production lines doesn't mean that stuff is going into retail. What it means is that they have to produce some, right? Then they got to do a lot of Q&A, and that all takes time. And then they have to finalize the assembly process. And so these things take roughly 6 months or more to go from, hey, we're going to build this thing, we've got the tooling in place, to actually be able to produce these things in sizable volume. I would guess here, just like every other single console that is ever launched in the history of console gaming, that there will be supply constraints early on. So if you're going to want one of these things on day one, I would highly recommend pre-ordering, and I would look for that this summer. So backwards compatibility with the Xbox One, yes, that is absolutely happening. That is already a thing, and that is Phil Spencer's marching orders to the teams that it has to be fully compatible, backwards compatible. What does the interface look like, and what features will it have? So a couple questions there. First off, there are starting to be some UI tweaks to what Microsoft is doing to the dashboard and onboarding experience, if you will. I'm not quite ready to dive into all that stuff. I just know that some of those tweaks are starting to make their way into testing at this time. So it's not going to look exactly the same, but I don't know how much of a difference we're going to see, because at this point, Microsoft is still building it. I would also expect day one of your console ownership that you are going to be installing a patch of some sort. That's not all that uncommon. It happens every time with games. You are going to connect your box to the internet, and you're going to have to download an update. Just be prepared for that kind of thing. Can I buy cross-generational games knowing I'll be able to enjoy it on my One X before I upgrade to the Series X? Yes, buy with confidence. Microsoft has said that time and time again, that you should buy with confidence. Buy your games. I personally buy them digitally. I know some people still like to buy them with the physical disc. Do whatever makes you happy, but it looks like by all indications that you'll be able to run your games on everything. So those are just some of the bigger questions that keep coming in over and over again. Now I have some place to link to hopefully do all that stuff. I'm curious what you guys are hoping to see. We've got a good look at the hardware. We know roughly the specs. I know there was like a 4chan post out there and people went crazy saying this has got to be like, I would hedge very heavily against somebody who's not willing to put their name behind it to actually say, hey, these are the specs, right? Anybody can go and create an anonymous account and put together roughly the right thing. We already know the generation of Navi. We already know the generation of chipset it's coming from AMD. Everything else is pretty easy to guess. It's going to be somewhere between probably 12 and 16 gigs of RAM, somewhere around there. We know it's going to have a terabyte of storage. That stuff is all easy to guess and do it so in an educated way at this point. We're looking forward to the raw comparisons, which there's been just scatterings all over the board about where consoles lie. I would just take a chill pill, sit back and relax. If you find out, but let's put it this way, if you find out the T-flops of both consoles tomorrow, it doesn't really change anything, right? It's how developers utilize that additional power, and are they even able to utilize it? You got to remember, right now, any developer who's building a game for the next generation console is doing so on a base rough line of specs. Microsoft has already handed that out to some of their primary developers and say, hey, build a console with this type of performance in mind, and this is what it is. And they usually undersell that amount of horsepower when they reach out this early on. And so games will continue to improve as developers learn to optimize and everything else. And that goes for PlayStation and Xbox. So that's all I got for today, guys. Hit that subscribe button. We'll keep coming back with more information. We'll catch all of you right back here next time.